Welcome to brand new episode of your one and only Huddle House. Um, not to be confused with the Huddle Buddies Weekly. We have new content coming. Well, not me and you, but the league in general. So we got competition tie, but we got the video side locked down, and Mr. Commish has got the written word side locked down. So we're covering all the bases. How's it going?
Sure are doing well, man. Doing well. I was wondering, James messages this morning saying that he was hoping to get the newsletter out. I was wondering if one was going to be coming this week, to be honest.
Yeah.
The events because of some of the events of this weekend, you are directly guilty of. So
I have more faith in James than that. I don't think he's I never thought that if we didn't get one, it was gonna be because of that. I always thought it would be just because those things, I mean, he made it beefy. Like it wasn't like he
what?
didn't put together a few paragraphs. That was like a straight up essay. Like I was, I was like, and he's got kids. I'm just like, we really appreciate the weekly effort, and I loved reading it, but man, I'm like, that takes some time, so I thought he might have just got busy, but
Yeah, put a lot of time into that, and it was a fun read. I'm looking forward to reading the next one when it comes out. But
yeah,
yeah,
I'm gonna read all of them,
let's not bury the lead of this episode.
but
I mean, we did something this weekend, you and I.
this was a rallying cry for the Huddle House hosts, man, like, we rallied the troops. They really came out to play. Me and you had the number 1 and the number 2 highest scoring weeks in the entire league. I don't think that's happened too often where we both had good weeks at the same time. I feel like usually one of us comes on here and is sad, and the other one's, like, either also sad or maybe a little bit happier and trying to cheer the other guy up, but we both had good weeks, both came to play. Things are looking in the right direction, man, so, let's start with yours, though, man. Jordan finally kinda gets what what we think has been coming for a few weeks that he's won. Don't get me wrong, had a few really high scoring weeks, not saying he hasn't, but it's also been a few weeks he's squeaked out in the 90s, and we're like, "That loss, man, is gonna have to come." You finally put it on him. How does it feel?
It felt good. It mainly felt good, more so than like beating an unbeaten. It was just seeing my team put up 135, have a really good week like that. That was exciting. I mean, I kind of had a feeling that I was going to win this week, especially because bye weeks were hitting everybody. But like Jordan was starting Sean Tucker as his RB2, and then Devin Tompkins as his wide receiver two. So like he was starting two extreme depth pieces on the Buccaneers, who like is a pretty top heavy offense to begin with. So I didn't think there was going to be too many points, and I got a little lucky with some bum performances from Gabe Davis. And
You get one of those probably 1 out of every 2 games.
Yeah, but IU kind of got held back a little bit too. So I had a good feeling. I thought I had some advantageous matchups versus him just because of those players he was starting, and yeah, but everybody came to play. Really capped off just by Travis Kelsey, man. 29.9. I need Taylor Swift in every game, bro. I need Taylor Swift always there. Like
Oh,
she
you're probably loving the whole T Swifty thing.
she can't go
It's
on her
driving me insane, but I'm glad it's helping you.
can't go on her international tour or whatever is coming up. I need her at every Chiefs game, other than whenever they play the Bengals in like week 17. But uh, yeah, I had some buys too. Like I didn't have T. Higgins or Derrick Henry. So the fact that like I think this was one week where I really felt like my team had some depth. And that was a cool feeling. I mean, I got Michael Thomas before the week, really just because I wanted to like ensure I had a guy that I could slot in that would be solid, because I really needed this win. So I went and got him and plugged him in, and then picking up Daryl Henderson and plugging him in right off the street. He gave me 13. Like looks like he's the leader of that backfield, which is exciting to have as a depth piece. So it felt good, and just good to get that win. Good to see an unbeaten team get felled, and yeah, it was exciting. I thought for sure I was going to have the highest score of the week. I thought I had it on lock, and then Tua kind of had a bit of a stinker, so I didn't get it. Yeah, which you got. Now, congratulations to you.
Thank you, thank you.
But yeah, how about your matchup? That was a really high scoring affair. I mean, James hung 128. was steamrolling back into it with McCaffrey on Monday night. I know you had
Dude, I was so scared. I thought, like, I wasn't James was almost I mean, he pretty much texted me saying, "GG's, congrats on the win," after the 425 games, because all he had left was Goddard and McCaffrey, and he was down by, like, 47 points or 50 points or something like that, and he's just like, "Yeah, there's no way, like, you got it." I was projected to win by like 20 at that point. And so he's like, GG's. I'm like, dude, I'm not gonna say it's over until McCaffrey is played and this is done with. Because it's Christian McCaffrey. And he's like, well, take a career game from Goddard. And then what do you know? He puts up 16, which I mean, not saying Goddard's never done that, but he doesn't do it that often. And so then I'm like, okay, this is within striking distance.
Bro, he had all those on like the first drive of the game. I remember watching it. Like he had 3 catches and that long touchdown on the first drive, and I was like, "Oh man, like he's getting it going early."
Yeah,
That was
thankfully he slowed down. Yeah, but, like and so, I'm, like, still even after that game, I was obviously more nervous, but I'm like, "Alright, still gonna take a 30 bomb." I know McCaffrey's been insane, but, like, he was injured a lot this week, he's gonna play, but maybe they'll limit him in some capacity. I didn't expect the game script to be quite that competitive, so I thought they might take him out of the game kinda mid-game, so I'm thinking, like, probably not gonna get 30. He's only gotten 30 or more one time the entire season, as good as he's been, and so I'm like, even with how good he's been, like, he'd still have to have his 1st or 2nd best game of the season. He's only done this once, so, like, I was still think it was pretty likely, but then whenever yeah, he has that 35-yard touchdown, I text James, and I'm like, "I swear, if you freaking win, dude, I'm gonna be so mad."
I saw
And
your tweet. I saw your tweet on Twitter when he tweeted Matthew Berry saying he needed how much from McCaffrey, and you said, "What?" You tweeted a GIF like, "Ah, don't know if that's gonna happen or whatever."
yeah, just
Like, oh no, famous last words.
I wanted to talk a little bit of trash, but no, it probably wasn't a good idea. But thankfully, he didn't get another touchdown. Thankfully, Brock Purdy did what he did at the end of the game, and I was
Threw
able
that
to
pick, man.
skate.
Oh, man. I can't imagine how bad you were sweating whenever they got the ball back and kept getting it. I was like, all McCaffrey
Yeah.
has to do is get in the end zone, and it's wraps.
Yeah, I was so nervous. Um, so nervous. So I feel like playing James it felt like I was in like a heavyweight bout with like Mike Tyson. It's
Yeah,
like he throws such hard punches whenever he has a knockout blow, like because he's got so many heavy hitters on his team. And it also feels like he's got a strong chin. It feels like you can hit him with your best shot, and hit him with some power punches, and he just stays up. Like it felt like, what is it going to take to finish this guy? So I mean, I gotta give him his flowers. Like I know he lost his first week this week, but I came out of the matchup I think respecting James's team even more than I already did because I really feel like it's going to take a week like that, like what I had to actually bury him, which like I said, I mean, it took everything my team had. Um, it took some things to go my way. I mean, Michael Pittman had a really terrible day in terms of like volume and getting receptions, but he just thankfully was able to house a 75 yarder,
yeah,
which took what was like a 2 point week and turned it into a 15-point week. Kendrick Bourne was able to, Kendrick Bourne. He's actually wide receiver 26 this year. Like, he's actually been pretty playable for me. I plugged him in a few weeks just when I've had to, just due to being kind of thin with buys and stuff and injuries with Debo. So had to plug him in a couple times. And he's actually been pretty good whenever I've had to play him. And he had a pretty good week. Josh Palmer led the Chargers this week in terms of their receiving. But it was mostly just the outstanding play of Patrick Mahomes finally giving me that ceiling week, which I know that he's capable of. I mean, I was talking to Carter and I was like, look, obviously I know Mahomes is QB6. Like, it's not like he's been terrible necessarily, but it's still, if that's your floor, I mean, you're obviously still a great dynasty quarterback, but he hadn't really had like a game this year, really. I felt like where he put up like that 30 bomb. Like he's had a bunch of games where he's around 20. He's always going to get you around 20. He's never going to get you that 10-point week, 12-point week. So that's why I love Mahomes. But I really felt like that explosion week had to have been coming at some point where it's like he finally just kind of goes off. And thankfully I caught that on the week I really needed it facing James. So that really helped me out a lot. So
Yeah, big win, man. Big win. You got ahead in the poll for the points too, or whatever, because you were the
Yeah,
only
I
one.
did. I did. Everyone was doubting me. No, I couldn't really
You
hate on New
doubted
York voting
yourself
for James.
too. You
What?
you picked James on the show too, didn't
I
you?
said if McCaffrey plays, which he did play, so technically, but I was assuming he wasn't going to play, so I voted on myself. But
Sheepish. You sheepishly picked yourself, but
I couldn't. I can say it to be humble on the show, but once the poll is actually out there, there's something tangible. It's like you just hover over picking James, and you're like, I can't do that. Like,
on the poll,
but
you can't pick another man on the poll. Like
yeah,
looking at this one, I'm looking at the one now, which only 6 people have voted in, but it's 5-1 for Marcus.
yeah.
Traigner's already voted for Brandon.
Oh yeah, you voted. Never mind. Yeah, we're both on Team Marcus on this one. But yeah, we're not gonna get too
I
much
was,
into it.
I was honestly glad to see that poll come through today because I thought for a minute I didn't know if the league chat just froze, if it got like blown up or what happened after Chris sent those back-to-back messages he did yesterday. I was like, I was like, is no one going to say anything back to this? Like, it was just silence. Like, anyhow, um,
We got one laughing emoji on it, but that's about all the engagement it
one
got.
person reacted, but it was quite the message. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Um, yeah. And so we're gonna get into something a little different this week. I think we've done it before in previous seasons, but we haven't really done it yet this season. We're gonna go over studs and duds, kind of what we call this the segment. Basically, we're gonna go through all 14 teams. There's been obviously a lot of guys that have surprised this year. There's been guys that have stunk. And we're gonna go over each team and kind of who those guys are on each of those teams. And by dud, I want to preface at least with my picks. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were like have been terrible. Sometimes they do. But some of these duds, in my opinion, just means they've just been falling quite short of expectations. So maybe they've still been okay, but they're not, compared to what they're supposed to be, they've been very disappointing.
Hmm.
So that's kind of was my philosophy at least. Doesn't mean they've been utter garbage. It just means, I think with the hype, surrounding those guys going into the season versus what they're producing,
Yeah.
they've been someone you can look at as, yeah, not living up to it. So, yeah, we're gonna get into this. So, I think the way we're gonna do it, we were talking before the episode, before we started filming. We were originally just gonna both say studs and then both say our duds, but we think we're just gonna get a lot of duplicates that way. So, we're gonna take turns with guys, and on one guy, I'll say the stud and he'll say the dud. The next guy, Ty will say the stud, I'll say the dud. So that way we're not, just giving the same guys for a lot of these. So
Why don't we just go down the league rankings too? That'll
that's
be
what I did. That's what I did when I made it. So
cool.
we'll start with James, our number one right now. And you want me to do the stud or the dud, Ty?
Do the stud.
All right. So for my stud, this is a guy we already knew was a really good player going into the season. It's not like he had no hype or that this guy wasn't supposed to be good. I think my reasoning for putting him in stud is how good he's been, and that is Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne, has been consistently very fantasy viable since he got in the league. He's been one of the few bell cows in the league. They drafted Tank Bigsby this offseason. You're thinking, oh, maybe Tank will take some of the red zone work, or maybe at least take away some third down work, maybe limit his upside a little bit. That has not happened. Tank Bigsby is useless. He's not fantasy relevant right now. Travis Etienne is the dude. He gets all of the snaps. He's been getting 80+% of the snaps every game. In his last 3 week stretch, he has been RB1, RB2, and RB4 in fantasy. And to top that off, his first 3 weeks, he had an RB6 outing and an RB9 outing. So he's currently sitting at the RB3, and he has 3 straight games with 2 touchdowns. I mean, he is getting 17, 18 carries a game. He's getting right around 90 to 100 yards on most of those, and he's getting in the end zone on most of them, in addition to getting 4 or 5 targets per game. So Travis Etienne is a fully emerged. I mean, in prior seasons, he's been like last season, he was RB 17. So I mean, he was good, still a guy obviously you're playing, but he wasn't like that elite alpha RB1. And I think part of what's made James so good this year is he already had that with CMC, but now you're pairing up another top 3 running back with him that's putting up those same types of numbers and that same type of workload. So it's and when everyone else in the league is scrambling to try to find streaming running backs, guys they can just try to get 10, 12 carries out of, for him to be able to start a back-to-back duo like that of 2 guys that are getting 15 to 20 touches a game and doing a lot with them and good offenses, it's been a huge reason why he's putting up these weeks. So he's my stud.
Yep, that one makes sense. I think there's somebody obvious on this roster who I think could be categorized as a dud, but I'm not going to pick him just because I don't think James is really counting on him. That's Jerry Judy I'm referring to, who's really
Mhm.
just a dud for the Broncos in general. But I'm actually going to give a different answer for this one that I think is a little bit more creative dud, and it's going to sound a little counterintuitive considering he's the wide receiver 10 right now on the year. But I'm going to say Devontae Adams has been a bit of a dud. And really, his standing as wide receiver 10 is just completely held up by that 35-point bomb he dropped against the Steelers, which was a great game. But here recently, he's been on a stretch of 3 games under 10 points, 2 of which were under 7. And I just think it's the Raiders like single-handedly kind of tanking his ability, which you think he's like quarterback proof, and he kind of has been. It's like he's throwing the ball and he goes and gets it, but this whole Brian Hoyer to like Aiden O'Connell stuff really has crippled him here the past few weeks. And for a guy who is Devontae Adams, you expect for double digits pretty consistently. I mean, last week he got 12 targets and only had 57 receiving yards on them all. So I mean, this just really hasn't been clicking with him. I think Jimmy G is supposed to be getting back healthy, so I'm sure that'll inflate him back up to a very consistent level. But I think that it's hard to find a dud on James's team. He's got a lot of good dudes, and I didn't want to name just the layup that's been on his bench all year. So I think that this is a guy that's kind of been letting him down in a way that you wouldn't have thought based on his name and pedigree, at least lately.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he doesn't have many duds, and I know you are completely right looking at his game log. He has been kind of on a decline, and that's noteworthy, but it's still, your season's going well whenever, yeah, your dud is still wide receiver 10. I think the guy I was going to say, we actually would have had a different one if we had gone the old approach. It's probably DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah,
I know he's
also,
not.
also a candidate. Yeah.
Yeah, because DeAndre Hopkins, I know he's not starting, so it doesn't seem as relevant as Devontae, and he's not. But I still think the expectation going into the season when he got traded to a team that has no other passing threats was like, oh, he's going to get 15 targets a game. And even if it is a bad offense, he's going to get everything, and Tannehill's good enough to at least complete some of those. And, thought he'd be a very viable flex, but he's not. He's been straight up terrible.
Yeah.
And I think at his age and the amount of time he has left for him to be wasting time on a team like that, um, and not even really getting any trade interest. Well, maybe he is. I don't know James's DMs, but still, the fact that he's probably not since he hasn't moved him yet. And there's just kind of this old veteran sitting on his bench that's one of the most talented receivers in the league, not even doing anything with it, I think is pretty disappointing.
Well, remains to be seen what'll happen there. You know,
For sure.
bounce back. He could have a great week this week, and then he goes up to wide receiver 5, and I look like an idiot. So,
Yeah.
uh, which that wouldn't be hard to do. I kind of do that a lot. So we'll go to Oriole Boss Man here, Jordan's team. I guess I got the stud here, huh?
Yep, you do.
Okay. Well, this one is an interesting one, but there's no doubt who my answer is here, and that's Adam Thielen. He's been the wide
Yeah.
7 on the year and putting up just insane numbers on an insane target share. He's been over 100 yards in 3 games so far this year. He scored 4 touchdowns. I can't do this math off the top of my head, but I'm sure it looks like he's averaging double-digit targets a game, like if not, 8 or 9. So I mean, he's just been such a beast at 33 years old. And I remember everybody was giving him slack when he traded Jarvis and Marquise Brown for him. From a dynasty perspective, maybe you still value Marquise a little more just because of the age, but it's hard. I mean, it certainly justifies any move a lot more when he's like a top 10 wide receiver for a season. He's been a big reason why Jordan jumped out to that 6-0 record that he had. It's definitely Adam Thielen. He's the only thing about the Panthers offense that moves the ball down the field right now. It's crazy.
Yeah, he's been getting everything. I mean, there's no other even relevant receiver right now in
Um,
Carolina, and there hasn't been much to be excited about as a Panthers fan, but this little late career resurgence from Adam Thielen might be the only thing. And so, yeah, he's been fantastic. There's a lot of candidates from Jordan's team actually for studs because I mean his team was projected to finish kind of bottom 5 in the league, by most of us, and
Yeah.
he's, number 2 in the league. You can't have that happen if guys don't exceed
No, I
expectations.
mean, you obviously have like Brandon Ayuk that's a stud certified. Don't even need to mention him. But like Jacoby Myers
Yeah,
is
Jacoby Myers would probably be my pick. Yeah, well, actually, Adam Thielen was my pick, but Jacoby's a very close second.
number 14 receiver on the year. Like he's having a great year. And you have Josh Allen, of course. But okay, I think dud. I want to hear your take for a dud on his team.
Yeah, so like I said, he hasn't had too many duds. It was actually kind of I mean, Gabe Davis hasn't been great, but he still had some great spike weeks, which is pretty much all you can expect from Gabe. So my dud, what I had to pick is Khalil Herbert.
Yeah.
Is the only guy I can really think of because of just largely because of what he traded to get Khalil Herbert. He traded Alvin Kamara, who apparently is, the Alvin Kamara from a few years ago and is getting 14 targets a game. Can you imagine what Jordan's team would be right now if he also had Alvin Kamara on it? Like, he'd be a strong out, with that still there. And I understand why he moved him. I understand Khalil's younger, but I think with the way Roshan Johnson has handled his workload he's gotten this year, he's looked pretty fresh, pretty young, pretty, dynamic. And then also Deonta Foreman just this year, this week going off for 3 touchdowns. It just doesn't feel like even when Herbert does come back from this injury that he's going to be in a position where he's getting all of the work or even 70% of it. I think it might be really just a true committee on a bad offense. And I think Jordan was expecting more from him when he made that trade, that he was truly going to be getting, a feature back for the most part. And I don't think Khalil's in a position to have that role. And even in the games he has played in, he hasn't been uber efficient. I mean, he had one 20-point week. That was nice. But outside of that, he's had 9.9, 6.3, 2.5, and 7.6. So,
That's
and
just
all those 4 games, he had 10 or less carries. So
yeah,
he's
kind
not
of
really
just
getting.
the Bears offense in general was really bad to start the year. But I think he's still got 2 more weeks on the IR with that ankle injury. So on top of like not having a great year, he's been hurt. So yeah, that would definitely be my pick for dud too. I thought that one was an easy one.
Mhm.
All
Yeah,
right,
so
but Marcus's team.
yep, so I got the stud. I mean, once again, I mean, I feel like these are kinda obvious, like, largely the ones I've gotten so far. I mean, it's gotta be Raheem Mostert. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no other. I'm not saying he hasn't had other guys play really well this year. Marcus obviously has. Lamar's having a good season.
Lamar's a good pick for stud too.
Yeah, he definitely has been a good QB this year, but it's gotta be Raheem Mostert. I mean, Raheem Mostert's 31 years old. He's everyone's like, "Oh, he's on his last legs. He's gotta be slowing down." Miami hasn't even been like that good of a rushing attack the last few years. Even though they've been a good offensive team, they've been mostly pass heavy. They've never been a team that's really ran as much as they have this year, but they have shifted largely their offensive focus to just run the ball down people's throats. And that hasn't even really taken away from Tyreek Hill, and maybe it's taken away from the other pass catchers in Miami. You're not getting anything at the tight end position, or even Jalen Waddle's kind of been a little bit, disappointing because they're giving a lot of those plays now to the running game with Raheem Mostert, and he's RB2. I mean, he wasn't super good this week, only 5.6, but I mean, Raheem Mostert's had 12, 25, 42, had one bad week with 4, but then 15 and then 33. Like, I mean, he's winning Marcus so many weeks. And it's been huge for Marcus to have those types of boosts, especially whenever Eckler's been out and injured a lot of these weeks. And then also, Brees Hall is finally starting to emerge now, but during that early stretch in the season, Brees was kind of ineffective because he was on a snap count and the offense was obviously playing terrible.
Yeah.
So he needed Mostert to kind of carry his RB room during those weeks, and he did the trick. So
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that was an easy pick for a stud, and I think he also has an equally easy pick for a dud, and that's Jahan Dotson, who guy that broke out immediately as a rookie. I mean, I'm looking back at his game log from last year, and he had immediate production there in Washington. Gets injured
mhm.
season, and he came back and even had kind of a strong finish. And it's just been a very quiet start to the year for him. I mean, he hasn't gotten over 43 receiving yards in a game, only gotten in the end zone once, and he's currently the wide receiver 63. I think that when you were looking at Marcus's team, prior to the season, that was a guy you were really banking or slotting into that wide receiver two spot, or certainly a flex spot on a consistent basis, and he just hasn't been able to get that out of him. And it's been a tough thing for his team, especially with this Justin Jefferson injury that's kept him out the past couple weeks. That could got that piece right there could have been the difference in a win and a loss last week for him. So I think he's an obvious bust candidate there. And I think if you were looking other directions for a bust, probably a much smaller scale, but Chiga Okonkwo he had a lot of hype coming into the year. That
Yeah, I was thinking Tyler Lockett compared to expectations.
sure.
Uh, I mean, he hasn't been awful. He's giving you 9.5, 10 points a game, but I think with his JSN starting to emerge more and more in that offense and Lockett getting less and less, and I think that ties in largely to Geno and his inefficiency this year. I mean, for the Seahawks pass catchers, I mean, Tyler Lockett's wide receiver 46,
Yeah,
Granted, they've already had their bye week, but still, I mean, he's been also pretty disappointing.
Marcus is going to hate me mentioning it, but the picks that he got for Cortland Sutton, he traded for Lockett. Cortland is currently the wide receiver 20 on the year, and Lockett's at 46. So that's one of those moves that just stings. You understand the idea behind it. It makes perfectly good sense, and then football happens. And
Yeah, I mean, I would have rather had Tyler Lockett than Courtland Sutton going into the season. I think we all would.
yeah, it's
Um,
just one of those things.
yeah.
But I think that certainly has gotten a lot of studly performances on there, and a couple busts that we talked about. But now we're to your team. So which would you rather take for your team, the stud or the dud? Which one do you want me to decide?
I'll let you. We'll stick with the order. I've definitely got a few duds.
So am I picking your stud?
Yes.
Okay. Um, I think you have a couple candidates for it. Let me just check. I'm sorry, I didn't prep as well as you did, but my mind is immediately going to two guys here.
Same here. Mine would as well.
Don't know which one I'm gonna pick. Um, I think I'm gonna go with Kenneth Walker. I think
Mm.
that's gonna be my pick for your stud, man, because there was so much concern and clouded mystery around him coming into the year. Is like, what's he gonna be with them drafting Charbonnet, and how much of his workload is gonna get cut into? And essentially, what we've seen so far is like he's gonna be the exact same guy he was last year, like a great running back, such a good feel and knack for getting in the end zone, like. He's been the running back 6 on the year, and he's really started to heat up these past few weeks. I mean, he had that game against Carolina where he had 29. I'm pretty sure that was the week he beat Marcus, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so he's really like propelled you to some key wins, and he's just been a good young asset like we thought he was. So I think that would be my pick for a stud for you. The other candidate I was eyeballing was Michael Pittman, because similarly wasn't sure what he was going to look like with a rookie quarterback, and he's been having like probably the best season of his career, averaging a ton of targets and getting in the end zone twice here. So yeah, I'm picking those guys for your team.
Yeah. I wouldn't have picked either of them, by the way, actually. I
Wow.
think
So when I said I'm looking at two guys, and you were like, yeah, we were looking at two different guys.
yeah, so no, no, both of those guys have been very satisfying for me to watch, and everything you said in your analysis, I fully endorse and agree with. My pick would have been Isaiah Pacheco, actually.
Yeah,
He's
Pacheco.
sitting at RB9 for the season.
Yeah,
And I mean, I was going into the season, and my expectation for him was like, let's just try to get some flex play out of him. Like, I don't know if I can trust him as an RB2 or anything, but if I can just at least get some flex usage out of him, that'd be great. And yeah, I mean, he's been RB9. He's been fantastic. I mean, 5 straight weeks, he had 15, 23, 13, 13, and 14. Like, I mean, he's
yeah,
averaging 13 and a half for the season. He hasn't had really a bad week. He has 4 touchdowns, and he has 4 or 5 straight weeks as a top 14 running back. I mean, he's been so steady. He's getting all the work. And they're finding new ways to use him in the passing game as well. So I mean, yeah, he's emerged as someone that I can say I can trust every single week.
Okay, well then, who was the other guy? Just real quick, just name drop him.
Oh no, no, no. My other guy was Ken Walker. But I'm saying the guy I had on my notes app that I was gonna pick if we were hypothetically doing, each saying one, mine was gonna be Pacheco.
All right, well, I got an idea for who your bust might be, but I want to hear who you pick.
my bust, and thankfully it hasn't affected my winning too much because I wasn't planning on playing him much anyway. But my bust is Quentin Johnston.
Yeah,
Um,
that one's
it's it hurts, man. Seeing Jordan Addison on one end of them, and then seeing Zay Flowers on the other end of them. And look, I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. But I know I did put him on the block, so it might seem like I am, but I'm not. I'm not going to trade him for a third round pick or something and just try to unload him. Like I'm still, if I'm open to trading him, guys, but it's going to still take pretty good value. I'm not going to be trading him for, any just like fab or something. Like, I'm still going to try to value him as a guy with a lot of potential because he still has it. I know it's still early in the season, and I know that, there's a lot of career left. He's young, he's talented, but so far, he is not it. So far. And I think I've just seen it in the past. Don't be mad at me for saying this, Ty, but I've seen it with Traylon Burks. I've seen it with Jamison Williams.
yeah,
I've seen it with some guys that's in prior rookie drafts where good fantasy owners, very good fantasy owners just miss. I mean, and it happens in the real NFL as well. I mean, good franchises occasionally miss. Like it happens. And I'm not saying I have yet necessarily, but it's feeling like that. I'm not gonna lie. It is kind of feeling like I just missed. And that worked out great for you because I think you hit. Zay Flowers has been super good. But right now, the panic meter is high. I'm not going to sit around here and beat around the bush. He is not getting targeted. Herbert does not even look at him. They're largely using him to basically set screens, it seems like, in the game and just like kind of block to get other guys open. It's like they're not even, and when they do let him run a route, that's like just a go route or like a deep post. Like
yeah,
they're just trying to use him as like a Miko Hardman or something. And it's like, hey guys, like his whole profile that you guys hyped up before the season as to why you took him is his yak ability, his ability to get him in space on a slant or something and let him take one to the house. Like, why are you not giving him those types of routes? Like, why are you just letting him just be a decoy on the deep threat? It's just, yeah, it's not good because he got the break he needed with Mike Williams getting hurt, and it's like, okay, now we're gonna see him get his usage, and it's all gone to Josh Palmer, and I think that's the only thing that has at least made me feel a little better is I at least have Palmer, but like, yeah, the panic meter is high, like.
yeah. It sucks, man. I lived through it with Traylon, and sometimes the only way to make yourself feel better is to free yourself from those guys. Free yourself from the chains that bind.
Yeah.
Well, we got a few minutes left in this recording, so let's keep trucking here.
Yeah, we're going a little slow,
On the
but
Carter's team,
yeah, so on Carter's,
you got
I got the stud, right?
yep,
Yeah, I mean, the stud has gotta be Zach Moss. I mean, so far, like, I mean, obviously, I do think things with last week are starting to indicate JT's getting more and more usage. I'm not saying Moss isn't gonna be flexible in future weeks. I'm not gonna project that. I still think he'll have usage, but I think it will go down. I don't think we're gonna see him keep up this pace of being RB5, but he's been absolutely outstanding in weeks where Carter's really needed him.
yeah,
Um, there's been some huge wins for Carter where Zach Moss put it on his shoulders and kind of propelled him to victory on weeks where really, I mean, Saquon's been banged up a few weeks, and then Pollard has been fine, but not quite the expectation he had going into the year. So for him to get, Moss to just have this heroic resurgence, all of a sudden this year and be someone that you can trust week in, week out, I think has been huge.
yeah. I think the bust is pretty easy. Or one my comment on the stud, that one's pretty easy too. He didn't know he had what he has had there this year, and he's definitely helped him win some games. I think the bust is pretty easy. Got to be Mr. Massage.
Yeah.
Because this was a guy Carter had been waiting on ever since our startup draft. Man, he's been patient, and this was the year, and he's just looked like the same guy we saw in limited fashion last year. Like very uncomfortable, not really trusting his eyes, rusty, and now with these injuries that have been piling up, it looks like it could be shaping out to be another lost season. Another person in the stud conversation could be Jared Goff, who really has. If he didn't have Jared Goff, I don't know what he would have been doing at quarterback. I mean, he would have had to find another alternative there. So that was a savvy move to make that and get that deal done before the season started. So he had some depth there. But got to be tough because he had such grand visions of Deshaun Watson to Amari Cooper, that stack. And with Deshaun not being very good and being injured, it's hurt Amari Cooper by proxy. So there's just kind of been a tough go of it there for him. So I would say those guys, and I guess if you wanted to talk about duds, this one feels kind of wrong because we hold him in such high regard. But Chris Olave has not lived
Mhm.
up to exactly what we thought he was going to be entering the year. We were thinking that was a for sure like top 12 guy, and he's been held back a little bit, probably by Derek Carr more so than anything. um, but he's still 23, wide receiver 23, so not a dud in the terms of all fantasy football, but relative to expectations, we held this guy in pretty high esteem coming into the year, and he's just been underperforming a little bit. So um, another person I think you could maybe mention for stud for him could be Rashi Rice. Like I think he
Yeah,
may have hit on something there.
I was deciding between Moss and Rice, but I'm like, okay, Moss is the more obvious pick, but Rice has been really good.
Showing flashes of being the most consistent wide receiver on that team. And
Mhm.
that's a position they've been seeking to fill forever, really, since Tyreek Hill left. So, I mean, you got to like that. Let's try and squeeze one more here in this last 2 minutes we have, Matt.
Oh, we got Lucas. Sorry, Lucas, we're trying to squeeze you in, but
I got stud for him.
yep, you do.
Let's see. Hmm.
Clock's ticking, man. We got a minute 45.
Okay, I got you. This one's easy too. I think DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift,
Yeah.
the definite stud here because he's been the workhorse and has taken over that backfield ever since he had that opportunity in week 2. He's been their guy, and he's looked great. He's looked every bit of what he could have been coming out of college, and I think that there was a little bit of unknown just because of how things ended there in Detroit. But it does look like he's got a guy that could hit, and I know he's only there for like 1 year in Philly, but I mean the way he's playing, I'd have to imagine they'd be interested in re-signing him, bringing him back
Mhm.
because he's looked explosive and quick and just great.
Yeah, you definitely think so. My dud for Lucas is another Philadelphia Eagle. It's been Devontae Smith.
Mm,
Compared to expectation, once again, similar to Olave, I mean, he's wide receiver 33. I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. He's getting you almost 10 points a game. But for the expectation, that's largely held up by that week where he put up 21, in week 2. And he also started with 14. So he started the season good. But his last 5 weeks, 4.8, 11.3, 1.1, 6.9, and 6.9. He's just been very inconsistent at getting good targets. AJ Brown's completely taken over. And Devontae seems left in the dust. Doesn't seem like Jalen Hurts is throwing well enough or throwing often enough to really support two different receivers. And when he is throwing to a second guy, it's been Goddard recently. So just doesn't seem to quite have that alpha play like he did for some stretches last year.
yeah.
Alrighty, so we're gonna pick things right back up. So next up would be Austin.
Yep. I think I was.
And I got the stud here.
Are you sure? I thought it. Oh no, you're right. You're right. Yeah. I
Yeah, so I mean, once again, I feel like I'm getting some obvious ones. I feel like can it be anyone other than Puka Nakua? I mean,
no
just
shot.
there's just no way it could be anybody else. I mean, he took this guy in the third round. No, none of us even knew who he was. And yeah, now he's like a top 10 wide receiver this season.
He picked him at 309, dude. He almost went undrafted.
I
Crazy.
took Will Levis one pick ahead of him.
Oh, that hurts.
Well, dude, we all picked all of our picks ahead of him. I
Dude,
mean,
if you were doing the rookie draft again, where do you think Puka would go?
top 3 probably.
You think he's the first receiver taken?
Maybe.
It's crazy to think about, right? Because
And this wasn't even that long ago. This was 4 months ago. That's just how crazy fantasy, especially dynasty, can change. I mean, we're already looking at how we'd redraft this, and yeah, Puka would be so high. And if
yeah,
someone had taken Puka in the first round before the season, we all would have literally just roasted him to the ground, you
I
know?
mean, there's no way he would have. Like no one, yeah, there's no
Yeah.
way to predict what he's done. I mean, it's unbelievable. Awesome. Such an awesome pickup.
Bigger than words. I mean, what a move. I mean, if Austin nailed the real life startup draft, that's why his team's always been decent. And now he's doing good in his rookie draft, so just picking the right dudes. Like, I can't even blame the guy for not trading if he's gonna draft like this. It's like he just keeps
He
filling his holes in the draft. He doesn't even need
he
to trade.
really it looked like we all believe JSN's gonna develop and become a stud. And it sure looked like Anthony Richardson was on track to be a stud, and Puka already is. So like he could have 3 big hits from this rookie draft just with those picks alone. So that's super exciting. So easy pick for a stud there, and I think it's kind of equally easy pick for a dud, and that's Damian Pierce. We kind of talked about him last week. I feel like he
Mhm.
running back 31 this year really has just been strangely underperforming if you look at what he did last year in a much worse offense. I mean, their offense is so much better this year. Their team is better this year. And he's just been kind of, yeah, like mediocre. He's had a 13-point week and an 11-point week. But other than that, he hasn't topped 81 yards, only 1 touchdown on the year, and not really getting anything in the receiving game. So I think that that's a pretty easy pick for a dud. Would have been Najee Harris, but unfortunately, fortunately for him, he was able to trade him and get a first and a second on top of get Montgomery a first and a second for Najee. That seems like it could be a heist um,
Yeah,
as time keeps progressing.
for
So
sure,
uh,
100%.
that's a pick. I think another pick, this is like more of a sleeper pick for a dud, could be Elijah Moore. Just again, because the Browns and Deshaun Watson have not really delivered on that offensive side of the ball through the air. Could
Mhm.
be another one. And then I guess if you wanted to keep going, another person that could fall in this category, just because he's had a lot of opportunity this year and he hasn't really taken a step, would be AJ Dillon. He's had that backfield to himself, unquestioned, a couple times here with injuries to Aaron Jones, and he just has not really done much with it. He did get in the end zone, had a good week against Vegas, but even with the volume, he's been kind of an inefficient runner. So, but a lot the studs far outweigh the duds on this team.
100%. Yeah. Moving on to yourself. Do you want your stud or your dud?
I guess we'll stick in order. I guess I'll take my stud. Although that feels like it's harder to name looking at my team here. I think that like the easiest answer is Travis Kelsey. It's almost like too easy because he's always a stud. Uh,
Yeah.
I think I can. I think I can go with DJ Moore instead and call him my stud. And very similar to what I was talking about Devonte Adams. DJ Moore is the wide receiver 5 right now, which is crazy to think about. But it's really just being held up by that 45-point bomb he dropped on Washington, where he scored 3 touchdowns and had 200 yards. Because other than that, he has had a 23-point game, and he's had a couple 13 and 11, but um, he's been getting very solid and consistent targets and receptions. It's varied a lot his yardage just because that Bears offense has been bad, and not having Fields has definitely hurt his opportunity. But I would call him my stud. I think I have more picks for duds though.
Yeah, there's a few, unfortunately. In your defense, though, there's a few on every team. So, I gotta say T. Higgins,
I mean that's the easiest, right?
yeah, you drafted him with thinking he would be the DJ Moore for your team and be the wide receiver one, and be the clear
Yeah,
alpha to lead you forward. And he's wide receiver 69. Now, granted, he did miss a game or two, but still, even
yeah,
in the games he's played, he has a 0 week on 8 targets. He has a 3.1 week on 8 targets, 2.9 week on only 4 targets, and now a 3 point week on 4 targets. So 2 games where he just wasn't targeted hardly at all, which is kind of like confusing. Like, oh, why are they not throwing him the ball?
hmm
And then 2 other weeks where he's gotten the great target share, but they've all been incompletions. So either he's just not catching, or Burrow's just giving him his worst balls. Might be a little bit of both. Like it feels like whenever Burrow throws to Jamar, it's like right on the money almost every time. And when he throws to T, it's like it's over his head or it's just a little bit off. It just
yeah.
doesn't seem like he's got that chemistry clicking. If it wasn't for a 24.9 week in week two, we'd probably be looking at wide receiver like 110 this year.
He'd be Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, he'd be Quentin Johnson. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I'll
man, it's
trade you for him straight
frustrating.
up.
It's frustrating, especially because, well, I think first off, just to preface it, like He's been injured. Burrow's been injured. I think the only thing about the Bengals offense that's worked this season has been Jamar Chase. So they're just like the past 2 weeks, they were like, we got to win these. Just give this guy the ball. So I think that hopefully the bye week will allow everybody to get healthy. It can be a reset, and they can look a little bit like themselves of old because this is a new thing for him. Like he always was second fiddle to Jamar, but he never was this consistently just terrible. So I'm hoping it can turn around. But what also stings to your point is like, I gave up Pickens, who's having a breakout year. He's the 19th receiver right now, but I also gave up my 25 first. So like I gave up a lot to get T, and I still, it helps that he's on my favorite team, and I like him as a player a lot. So like that helps me not feel scorned by him because I really love him no matter what. Um, yeah, that's been frustrating. So I think that's an easy pick for a dud. Other contenders could be well, I guess nobody's been like an outright like Jonathan Taylor with the whole holding out thing. I mean, if I still had Justin Fields on my team, that'd have been an easy pick, but like
Mhm.
anymore. So anyhow, we can move on and keep this thing rolling. Talk about Jeremy.
Yeah. So I got Jeremy Stud. Really, he hasn't been as good the last few weeks, but to me, the guy that still comes to mind is Nico Collins. Um, and also you can almost even put Tank Dell in there. He's got both of them. Really,
Mhm.
just the Texans wide receiver room, which I think going into the year it was kind of just like, okay, how well is CJ Stroud gonna look, or how good is he gonna look, and then also, you know, is Robert Woods gonna be a thing? How much is Dalton Schultz gonna get? Are they gonna have enough passing volume to support receivers? It just didn't really seem like you wanted any Texans receiver really going into the year. That was kind of the perception, but now yeah, I mean, I want Texans receivers. I mean, CJ Stroud looks like the dude. He's throwing the ball a good amount. He's throwing accurately. He's not turning it over a lot. They actually look like a really competent team. And Nico Collins has been the guy. He's been the one getting uh, the large bulk of the target share. He's sitting at wide receiver 13 this year. He's averaging almost 15 points a game. He has had a few dud weeks where he had like 5 1 week and then 4 another week, but he also has, 3 games with 9 or more targets, and he has a 32 week, a 24 week, and a couple other 11 and 10 weeks. So I mean, he's looked like the guy that you can actually consistently start and trust. And there might be a few weeks he lets you down, but more often than not, it seems like he's going to deliver. So I've been very impressed with Nico.
Yeah, I think the other obvious one is AJ Brown, who set like an NFL record this year with most receiving or most games in a row with over 125 receiving yards.
Yeah,
That's too easy a pick. I think I got his bust. So if I was a level-headed fan capable of fairly critiquing the players and people I love most, I would pick Joe Burrow as his bust, but I'm not. So I'm going to pick Miles Sanders as his bust because I can't talk bad about Joe Shiesty. So I'm going to say Miles Sanders is a bust who really was the only running back to get a free agent contract at all this year. And everybody was like, he's going to come in, workhorse, he's going to be great. And that offense has just stunk. And Miles Sanders has stunk in accordance with that. He's the running back 45 on the year, somebody that I think everybody was like, it's one of those things where his value was way higher in the offseason than it has been since the season started because of the wonder of him in this new offense. And since he's actually gotten to go out there and show it, he's done nothing but kind of go down on that value. So I'm picking Miles Sanders as a bust because that was a guy you thought lock it in, RB2, going to be really good, and he just hasn't been. He's just been a guy.
yeah, I was really high on Miles. I mean, I think I'm 99% sure I even offered Jeremy the pick 5 for him at one point. Which, granted, right now that'd be just an even wash with how QJ's look, but
Yeah,
still, I'm just saying, um,
in theory though.
yeah, in theory, and so I'm kind of glad I dodged that ship. I mean, Miles has been
Dude,
terrible.
I'm
I
just
mean,
realizing this right now. 6 teams in our league are 3-4. Nearly half
yeah,
the league sits at 3-4 right now. That's crazy. That pendulum's going to swing this week, man.
for sure, for sure. This is a huge week. My bust for or dud for him would have been Ramondre Stevenson, and
Also,
that's largely because even though as awful as Miles has been, and I'm not saying Miles didn't have expectation, but I think his expectation was to just be an okay RB2. I mean, I think almost every fantasy, expert or people that have their podcasts and stuff were listing Ramondre as like an Austin Eckler type this year, just fire him up, top 6, top 7 running back, clear number 1. He's only had 1 week as an RB1 this season.
Yeah,
Only 1 week. He's been really, really mediocre. He's sitting at, RB21, which isn't terrible, but only 9.5 points a game. It's just not a guy you can trust as your number 1. So
nah,
really just his running backs in general have been awful, and it's really the reason Jeremy told me he kinda started up the semi rebuild with the Tyreek move.
mhm.
So, his
Uh,
running backs let him down.
let's move on here to Brandon. I guess I got a stud, and this one's easy for me. It's my guy, always open, Jamar Chase. And I think that you see just the studness of him come in that week against Arizona when he just explodes for 15 catches, 192 yards, 3 tutties, 45-point week. Like that's what he can do on any given week. And he got off to a slow start to the year because of how bad the Bengals offense was. But he always has been getting peppered with targets. Like the lowest amount of targets he's gotten in a week has been 8. And the past 2 weeks alone, he's gotten 13 and then 19. And against the Rams, he got 15. Like he's always the first read. He's always open. And he's always capable of going for 45 like he did that 1 week. So, I mean, just such a luxury to have on the team. All
Mhm.
easy stud.
That wouldn't have actually been my pick. Jamar's been really good, but I think there's another always open on his team, and that's Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, but I couldn't pick Alvin because
He did miss 3 games.
the first 3 weeks. I mean, but since he's come back, he has looked very studly.
Yeah, he's been an RB1 every single week he's been back. And his worst week was 14, and he has 2 games with 14 targets, another game with 8 targets. Derek Carr does not see anybody else on the field.
Uh,
So yeah, that was my pick. I know he did miss 3 weeks, but I
yeah,
think
he also would fit the bill.
yeah. But my dud for him, there's actually quite a few choices. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, God.
Brandon's team has really overall been disappointing.
I know
Uh,
who mine is. I think there's one that's very easy.
but the one that sticks out to me the most is Calvin Ridley.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few other choices, but Calvin Ridley, he traded Stephon Diggs straight up for him. He
Yep.
swapped stacks. He swapped Josh and Stephon for Trevor and Calvin, and he's probably looking in the mirror a little bit right now and thinking, "Hey, I know I have 2 championships. I know I can do what I want, but maybe that wasn't the greatest swap." Because Josh Allen's not going anywhere. He's still been great. And Stephon Diggs is still doing Stephon Diggs things. And I think he thought he was inheriting the Jags version of Stephon Diggs,
Yeah.
a guy to come in and be a top 10 wide receiver. In the preseason, we were talking about Calvin like that was a very high possibility. And week 1, Calvin did that. Week 1, Calvin Ridley comes in and puts up a 20 bomb and looks like he's getting almost all the looks, 11 targets, and Christian Kirk was barely looked at that game. And I was thinking after week 1, like, go all in, try to get Calvin Ridley, like in some of my leagues. Like, this dude's gonna be top 10 receiver this year. And it's just been all downhill since
Yeah.
then.
It really has.
He did have one 17 week where he looked pretty good, but like for the most part, he hasn't gotten consistent target share. He has 5 games with 4 or less catches. So even on the games where he is getting targeted, he's not getting them caught very often.
Yeah, I think
And he
that's
just
the big
has
thing. It's just the target share. It fluctuates a lot for him. And he just had him and Trevor have not seemed to click totally. But there's a lot of season left for him.
a
So
lot of season left. I definitely still love the talent. I'm still betting on the talent. I do think things will get better for him. Um, I'm still a believer. I'm not like completely out on Calvin Ridley. I just think what we're seeing right now is not him living up to his potential.
agreed. On to Mitri.
Mitri's got a lot of studs this year, man.
A lot of studs.
A lot of studs. I think Mitri can look back at his draft class and be like, I might have revitalized my team, like
Yep.
largely. I'm not saying he's a contender yet, but he's put the building blocks in place with his draft. There's a lot more studs than duds. But I've got his stud. And like I said, there's not too many duds. I think his guys have actually delivered on expectation. There's a lot of guys that I can put here. Um, a lot, but I think the one I'm gotta go with, he is injured right now, but I think I have to go with Devon A Chain.
Yeah. Oh,
I
100%.
mean, he's even with missing the last week, or actually the last 2 weeks, excuse me. he's still RB7.
RB7, and he's missed the last 2 weeks. He didn't play week one, and week two he only played 10% of the snaps. Like
Yeah,
essentially
I mean,
3 weeks, 3 weeks he's gotten like over. I'm gonna do this math real quick. 450 yards and 5 touchdowns in 3 weeks, essentially. Like it's insane.
no, 6 tou no, you're no, you miscounted 7
I
touchdowns.
missed the receptions. My
He
bad.
had 2 receiving touchdowns. 7 touchdowns and 450 yards in 3 weeks might be one of the craziest 3-game stretches I've ever seen a running back have. The man is averaging 12 yards a carry this season. Obviously, I'm not gonna sit around here and act like this is sustainable, this level of effectiveness, but you have to look at A-Chain, see the way he's produced, see the way he's burst onto the field, and see Raheem Mostert is still a 31-year-old running back. I'm not saying Mostert hasn't been fantastic and hasn't looked like a fresh puppy out there, but you still have to imagine, give it a year, 2 years, Mostert's eventually gonna slow down. You would have to think, and he's given the Dolphins zero reason to think they need to go acquire a
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley or draft another running back. He's given them every reason to think, just make it his role. Like they're a team built on speed. They have Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and he's one of the fastest running backs in the league. Devon A-Chain is. I mean, his 40-yard dash. So there's no reason to think they would just change their identity and just not keep him as the guy.
Question for you there. He picked Achan at the ninth pick in our rookie draft. Where do you think he goes redraft now if we were doing our rookie draft again? Do you think
Probably
he
top five, probably,
do you
or
think,
maybe six.
do you think he goes ahead of Jameer Gibbs?
No, I don't. I don't. Maybe,
He has both.
maybe,
So like
maybe. I mean, it's over. It's all depends on this. It's subjective. I don't know. Some
would
guys
you
definitely would take him. Me, I don't know. I'd love to ask Mitri that question. I don't know. I
would you
still
take
think
Puka over Achan or would you take Achan over
I
Puka?
would take Puka because I value receivers slightly more.
Yeah.
But
They're
it's
close,
tough.
bro. They're close.
Yeah, but there's a
Yeah,
lot. I mean, you could have easily said Josh Downs or Jordan Addison for Mitri Stud.
or,
He's
or
his
Gibbs.
class.
You could
What?
you could still say Gibbs. Like he kind of broke out last week. So I mean, he has a lot. I think if I were to name a dud, and I think I'm just thinking back to preseason expectations, I'm gonna have to say Darren Waller. And it sounds bad now because he just hung 19 points and had a great game. He's currently, I mean, he's a tight end 5, but I think that speaks more so to the tight end. Uh,
Yeah, it's more a tight end
I
situation.
mean, because there was a stretch of weeks there when you're like, what happened to Darren Waller, old man? Like he looks gas. Like weeks 1 through 5, really. And then he turned it around a little bit against Miami in week 5, and then week 7 against Washington, he had a great game. So he's coming around a little bit. But I think, yeah, people were drafting him, at least in redraft leagues, expecting him to be like a definite stud at tight end. And he does kind of look like he's a good tight end, but he's not like in that upper tier of great tight ends that there's only a few of. Like I think people were thinking he could climb into that category, and I don't think he is. So I'm going to call him the dud, but it feels he's tight end 5, so like he's not
Yeah,
amazing. But
Mitri's guys have came to play this year. I mean, his
three and
team's
four,
3 and
man.
4. I mean, and he's not like his points totals are that like embarrassing or anything. He's got a respectable roster. It is largely built off rookies.
So now I got to name a stud on Jake's team. It seems. Okay, I can do
There's
that.
an obvious one.
Yeah, he's injured right now too, but I'm going to say Kyron Williams.
Yeah, it's got to be Kyron.
Yeah, Kyron, talk about a hit there, just walks into that leading role. And anytime you're getting majority of the carries in the Rams backfield, or anytime you're with Sean McVay, you are a very valuable fantasy asset. And Kyron was really on track to have a running back 1 finish this year. Unfortunate injury, going to hold him out for a little while. But yeah, he's an easy stud candidate. And then, I mean, I think you could have talked about Mike Evans in this role too before he made that recent trade and send him to Chris. But I'm gonna roll with Kyron here as his stud.
Yeah, I think it's a super fair play. Um, a lot of his guys, it's hard to really call them duds because there weren't great expectations on him to begin with. You could have argued DK Metcalf before he traded him because he's been a little bit disappointing this year. I think Hollywood has been about as good as he possibly can in the Cardinals offense. So my pick for him is going to be Javonte Williams.
Hmm.
Not that he's been bad per se necessarily in terms of what he's done with his carries, because I mean he's still getting 4 to 5 yards a carry in most of his games. It's not like he's being inefficient with his touches. It's really just that they are refusing to bell cow him, and make him the feature back like I think Jake expected. I mean, you've gotten a lot of Jaleel McLaughlin fired up, and you've also seen
Yeah.
a decent bit of P Ryan. And it's also a team that's been trailing so much that they just haven't had that much opportunity to even run. I mean, he's currently sitting at wide receiver, or excuse me, running back 36, which isn't what you'd love to see, and he's only averaging 7 points a game. So it's just that he's just not getting the workload. He's getting 10, 11 touches a game, or carries, which isn't awful, but he hasn't gotten a touchdown yet this season. And he only has one game of 15 or more. So he's just not quite what I think Jake was expecting.
Uber talented, this tough situation there for him.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I agree with that pick. Let's keep moving on down here and get to Chris.
Yeah, Chris did a lot for his team this week. I've got Chris's stud. There's a few choices that I could look at. I mean, obviously Stephon Diggs has been that dude. I'm not gonna say Tyjae Spears, even though he's been okay, just because he just acquired him pretty recently, so he hasn't even really played for him yet. So I'm gonna go with this quarterback, CJ Stroud.
Mhm.
I think that last year, I mean, Russell Wilson was so putrid last year that, I think Chris was a little bit in the dumps, for trading you obviously a first round pick and Rodgers for him, and just wasn't getting consistent QB play. And I think now you're looking at Stroud, and it's looking like he might have his QB of the future. I don't think Chris is necessarily dying to get a quarterback now. He doesn't have to throw Russell Wilson in there and just hope for the best. Like I think he's got a young, promising dude. There's obviously another candidate that I didn't. My brain looked over him, but I think you also have to mention Sam Laporta as well, tight
100%.
end three.
100%.
Um,
I think
yeah.
if you're looking at like a dud, and side note here, did you remember this? Do you remember how cheap he got Aaron Jones for?
Oh yeah, dude. He got him for Evan Hull and a second round pick.
Yeah, I totally forgot that happened. That is so crazy cheap. But it hadn't really mattered because Aaron Jones has been hurt all year, other than week one when he was the RB1 on the year. But I was looking at Chris's team and I'm like, man, I like this roster. Like, how is he 2-5? And I really feel like it comes down to that running back position. He has two guys that Najee just inefficient, and then Aaron Jones been banged up, and he's really just been not been getting much from that position at all this year. And be it injuries or inefficiency, I think that's the thing that's really holding him back. So I mean, Dud, it's definitely one of those guys. I'll probably just say I'll probably say Najee Harris, just knowing that he gave up a lot to get him, and might have been better sticking with Montgomery instead, let alone putting on the draft capital he did. Um, so I think I'll lean towards Najee as the dud, but I think it's Najee or it's Aaron Jones, and maybe throw an honorable mention to like Rashad Bateman. But I
Yeah.
don't know if he was counting on much from Rashad Bateman or not.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely gotta be one of those 2 for sure. Aaron Jones's is a little bit less his fault because he's just been injured. I mean, that happens, part of the game.
Sure.
When he has played, he obviously he's had 2, bad weeks in those games, but one of those games was the game he got hurt. So,
I
you
do
know.
I like his team, man. Like I don't think he's gonna end the year in the 13th spot. I just can't imagine that with his
No,
roster.
his team is freaking good, especially after that trade. He's got some studs.
Yeah.
He's not gonna be an easy out any of these weeks. But yeah, and then that moves into my pick would have been Najee as well, by the way. Then moving into Caleb's team, I mean, so I've got
It's something that pisses me off looking at this, man. Like Caleb has scored 485 points. A quarter of those came against me. The one win he has, like he scored a quarter of his points against me. It's terrible, man. It hurts so bad. Like I see him put up 40-point weeks and like dude dropped 120 on me. Like, come on. Dude. That is such just horse crap. But anyhow, yeah, let's talk about it. Do I have his stud? Yeah, I have
you
his
have a stud.
um
There's not any.
well that's probably by design. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even think you can call Jalen Waddle a stud this year.
No, he has not been a stud.
I think honestly your stud pick is Kyle Pitts because he's at least flashed a couple times these past few weeks. He's
Yeah,
like
he has.
could be a good core piece of the future. And I knew as soon as he went up on the block, I was like, that's definitely Caleb going to get him. Uh,
Yeah.
I knew that was going to be happening. So I think that that'd be my pick. I mean, even like Christian Watson, he's stashed him on the taxi. He's been bad this year, battling injury. So yeah, that'd be my pick. I think Kyle Pitts for the stud because he's showing some flash.
So my pick for the stud, I have 2 picks actually. I have the Cowboys defense.
Oh, didn't even think about them. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's clearly your stud.
And then I have Marvin Harrison Jr.
Oh, nice. I thought,
Heisman.
I thought you were going to say I have the Cowboys defense and then the Bills defense. The defenses are studs.
They really are though. It's his only players that are worth anything right now, besides for Jalen Waddle. But my dud, I mean, I can't call these guys duds because they don't have expectation. It's like you can't sit around here and call John Mechie or Samir White duds. Like it's not fair to them. They're not in a position where they can even be a dud because they don't play. So I can't call these guys. The only guy I can actually call a dud is Jalen Waddle, and
Yeah,
it's not that he's been terrible, but he's not been what he's supposed to be. He's wide receiver 36, only averaging 10 a game. Seems like Tyreek gets everything there. And whenever they're not throwing, they're running it down with the people's throats with A Chain and Mostert. It's not like Waddle's getting the consistent target share he used to get. 4 games in the yellow in terms of target amount, 5 or 6 targets in 4 of his 6 games. Hasn't really been getting those 9, 10 targets like he was getting in years prior. So definitely seems like they're not passing as much because they're running so well. And when they are passing, it's all Tyreek. So it's the only guy I can call a dud because none of these other guys have any expectation. Like they can't let you down whenever you never expected them to not let you down in the first place.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I mean his whole team is, I mean, obviously on paper duds, but I mean in terms of what a guy is capable of doing, Waddle's the only guy that could realistically disappoint you.
I agree, and I was almost considering calling him the stud just because he's the only like player really on his team. So like, isn't that something? His stud and his dud could really be the same guy. That's funny.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, we can make fun of Caleb all we want because I mean he wants this. I mean he right now currently has the number 1 pick, the number 2 pick, the number 3 pick, and the number 4 pick, and right now the number 7 pick. So I mean he can get whoever the heck he wants. I mean right now in the rookie draft, and hopefully do what Mitri did as his goal and just nail those picks. And then he'll be back relevant again. But right now he's got a lot of holes.
Oh, that was fun. That was cool. That was a good exercise to go through.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of mental exercise, but I hope you guys enjoy this. We're gonna get this out there for you.
Yep,
Next week we're gonna try to get a guest on and do a mid-season ranking. Obviously, with 6 teams being 3 and 4, this is a huge moving week. Lot more is gonna be said about who's contending and who's not after this week. So,
it's true.
who you got this week, Ty?
Mitri, another 3-4 team. So
Okay, so yeah, I think
oh,
some of these 3 and 4 teams are gonna beat up on each other this week. So.
yeah, so I think that because like I said, there's 6 of us in the league right now. So like it's definitely going to be a standing shift just based on what happens in some of these matchups. So see.
Yeah, we'll see. But we'll see you guys later. I hope you enjoyed the episode.